What I am about to reveal was never designed for a world like this, and that is exactly why it feels dangerous when you first hear it. The Indian Ujjayi reverse breathing technique was deliberately buried, mislabeled as esoteric yoga folklore, because it does something modern systems cannot control. It forces every cell in your body to purge stagnation and wake up at once. You were taught to breathe forward, shallow, quietly obedient to stress, screens, and urgency. But ancient Indian physiologists understood something terrifyingly precise. When breath flows the wrong way, pressure collapses inward, toxins accumulate, nerves misfire, and consciousness dims without pain or warning. You do not notice the decay because it feels normal. That is the trap. I am telling you this now because your body is already signaling distress through fatigue, anxiety, brain fog, and emotional volatility, and you have been conditioned to treat symptoms instead of the root. I have spent years decoding suppressed manuscripts and comparing them to modern neural and cellular data, and the overlap is not philosophical, it is mechanical. Reverse Ujjayi was never about calm breathing for relaxation. It was a cellular cleansing weapon. It alters pressure inside the thoracic cavity in a way that modern breathing never touches, and that shift alone determines whether your blood carries vitality or waste. The warning in the old texts was not superstition. They said this breath was dangerous because it strips illusion from the nervous system too quickly. When oxygen, nitric oxide, and vagal signaling suddenly realign, the body has no place to hide dysfunction. That is why shallow breathing culture prefers slow, soft techniques that soothe without transforming. You are not broken. You are underventilated at a biological level. Right now, every cell is negotiating survival in a low-pressure, low-signal environment, and your mind calls that normal life. This is the moment where you either keep breathing like a domesticated organism, or you reclaim a pattern that was designed to cleanse blood, nerve, and consciousness simultaneously. Understand this clearly. Once you reverse the breath, there is no pretending you are fine. To understand why your system feels perpetually strained, you have to confront a truth most people never hear. Modern breathing reverses biology in the wrong direction. You inhale by lifting the chest, exhale by collapsing inward, and with every cycle you reinforce a pressure pattern that traps waste instead of moving it out. Ancient Indian breath scientists did not speak in metaphors about energy for decoration. They were describing fluid dynamics inside the human organism. When pressure moves incorrectly, lymph stalls, venous blood slows, and the vagus nerve remains irritated rather than informed. You feel this as constant alertness without clarity, tiredness without rest, emotions without grounding. Reverse Ujjayi exists because the body was never meant to be ventilated like a panicked animal. It was designed to be pressurized like a living pump. Modern stress locks you into sympathetic dominance, not because you are weak, but because your breath never creates the downward and inward signals required to tell the nervous system that danger has passed. Ancient yogis warned that when breath becomes shallow and silent, cells drown slowly in their own exhaust, carbon dioxide balance breaks, nitric oxide production collapses, and the brain shifts into survival prediction instead of perception. You become reactive, compulsive, fragmented. This is not psychology, it is physics acting on biology. Reverse breathing corrects this by restoring an ancient pressure logic. Expansion inward, release upward. Sound as resistance, control instead of collapse. When the throat constricts in Ujjayi, it is not symbolic. It creates back pressure that stimulates vagal afferents directly, sending a nonverbal command to the brainstem that the environment is safe enough to cleanse. That single signal determines whether your body stores stress hormones or flushes them. The reason this technique feels unfamiliar is because your nervous system has adapted to dysfunction as baseline reality. You have been breathing in a way that keeps you functional but never free. The moment pressure reverses, the system recognizes the error instantly, and that recognition can feel unsettling. That is why this knowledge was restricted. It does not comfort the ego. It confronts the body with truth. Now we cross the line between ancient warning and measurable science, because this is where disbelief usually collapses. Reverse Ujjayi works because it hijacks the deepest control circuits of your biology, the ones you never consciously touch. When you reverse the pressure of the breath while maintaining glottal resistance, you activate vagal afferent fibers that terminate directly in the brainstem. Not the thinking brain, but the command center that decides whether. This is where precision becomes non-negotiable, because reverse Ujjayi is not forgiving of sloppy execution. You begin seated or standing with the spine vertical, not relaxed, not rigid, but structurally alert, because pressure transmission depends on alignment. The mouth remains closed at all times. The throat gently constricts as if you were fogging a mirror with your mouth closed, creating the signature Ujjayi sound. Low, steady, oceanic. Now comes the reversal that most people instinctively resist. Instead of inhaling by expanding outward, you initiate the inhale by subtly drawing the lower abdomen inward and upward, creating negative pressure that pulls air down through the nose while the rib cage remains relatively quiet. This inward draw is not forceful. It is deliberate, controlled, almost surgical. The inhale is slow, dense, audible. At the top, there is no pause. The exhale begins by releasing the abdomen downward and outward while maintaining throat resistance, allowing the breath to rise and exit without collapse. You are not pushing air out. You are letting pressure equalize upward. The sound must remain continuous in both directions. If it disappears, the circuit breaks. Your attention stays anchored at the base of the throat and the center of the chest, not drifting, not visualizing fantasies. Each cycle should last approximately 6 to 8 seconds total, with inhale and exhale evenly matched. Speed is irrelevant. Smoothness is everything. The mistake most people make is trying to relax into this breath. That is incorrect. This is an active cleansing pattern, not sedation. Another common error is lifting the chest or flaring the ribs, which immediately restores dysfunctional pressure gradients. If you feel lightheaded, you are forcing volume instead of controlling resistance. If you feel nothing, you are breathing forward instead of reverse. Correct execution produces a subtle internal compression followed by a wave of release, like wringing and soaking tissue simultaneously. You begin with 5 minutes, no more, because the nervous system needs time to interpret the signal. This is not exercise. It is a protocol. Treat it like one. The effects of reverse Ujjayi do not arrive as vague promises. They unfold on a timeline the body recognizes immediately. In the first 1 to 3 minutes, most people notice a dense warmth spreading through the chest and abdomen, not heat from exertion, but circulation, returning to areas that have been under-pressurized for years. The mind often becomes unusually quiet, yet alert, as if background noise has been muted without sedation. Within the first session, vagal activation lowers unnecessary muscle tone, and breathing after the practice feels deeper, even without effort. After 3 days of consistent use, sleep architecture begins to change. You fall asleep faster, wake less often, and dream more vividly, a sign that theta-dominant cycles are stabilizing. Digestive rhythm improves. as parasympathetic signaling reaches the gut, and emotional reactions slow down not because you care less, but because your nervous system no longer overreacts to harmless stimuli. Around 7 days, circulation efficiency becomes noticeable. Cold hands and feet warm faster, postural tension releases, and endurance during the day increases without stimulants. This is nitric oxide and carbon dioxide balance doing their work. By day 14 to 21, deeper cellular changes surface. Inflammatory sensations reduce, mental clarity sharpens, and the baseline feeling of being rushed dissolves. Many people report spontaneous deep breaths during the day, the body correcting itself without conscious effort. This is the clearest sign the protocol has rewired respiratory control centers. You are no longer forcing calm. Your system has learned it. The technique does not add energy. It removes friction. What you feel returning is what was suppressed. If these changes do not appear, the protocol is not being followed precisely. Biology does not negotiate. This is the part that ancient teachers whispered about and modern instructors conveniently ignore, because misuse reveals how powerful this mechanism actually is. Reverse Ujjayi was traditionally restricted, not because it was mystical, but because it accelerates processes the body usually spreads over years. When pressure, vagal tone, and gas exchange shift rapidly, stored tension does not politely dissolve, it evacuates. Some people experience sudden emotional releases, waves of sadness, anger, or fear without a story attached. That is not psychological instability, it is nervous system unloading. Others notice temporary fatigue, mild headaches, or flu-like sensations during the first week. These are classic signs of lymphatic movement and inflammatory byproducts entering circulation for elimination. Ancient texts described this as purification sickness, not pathology. However, forcing the breath, extending sessions too long, now you stand at a threshold most people never even see, because it requires responsibility instead of comfort. You can continue breathing the way you were trained, shallow, efficient enough to survive, never powerful enough to cleanse. Or you can accept what this knowledge implies. Reverse Ujjayi does not ask for belief. It demands execution. 5 minutes a day is enough to expose whether you are truly in control of your biology or merely managing decline with habits and distractions. Ancient practitioners framed this as a test of readiness, not worthiness. When you reverse the breath, you reverse the direction of adaptation itself. The body stops bracing for impact and starts repairing damage. This is why the technique feels forbidden. A nervous system that can downshift at will cannot be easily manipulated, exhausted, or chemically propped up. I am not offering you a trick, a trend, or a comfort ritual. I am handing you a protocol that forces coherence at the level where excuses do not exist. The challenge is simple and uncompromising. Practice exactly as instructed for 21 days without modifying, embellishing, or skipping when it feels inconvenient. Let the breath do the work you have been trying to think your way out of. If nothing changes, you lose nothing but minutes. If it works, you regain access to a biological state that modern life quietly stole. Once you feel that difference, you will understand why this technique was hidden, in plain sight, diluted, renamed, and softened. Some systems benefit when you forget how powerful breathing was meant to be. The moment you reverse it, you are no longer passive. You are participating.